Have you ever wondered if, like, a few ancient sounds could hold, like, the key to the cosmic heartbeat?
Ooh, that's a really cool thought.
Right. Imagine those huge rhythms of the universe. Not just something we see, but something captured and passed down for, like, thousands of years. Welcome to the deep dive.
It is a powerful thought. To think that language, something so human, could help us understand these grand cycles.
Definitely. And that's exactly the journey we've been on, right?
Mm.
And in our last exploration, we started to kind of unpack the system in Aryabhata's Daśagītikā, specifically verse 2. Remember, we decoded those syllables, khyughṛ, and we found out it meant 4.32 million.
Yeah, a number that really seemed to echo some fundamental period in the cosmos.
Right, totally. And now in verse 3, we see that number like really put to work. Because in this verse is where Aryabhata shows us the dance of the heavens. It's like he's detailing the number of revolutions the sun, moon, and planets make within that huge time frame, the Mahayuga.
It's mind-blowing when you think about it. Aryabhata, this sage of the stars back in 499 CE, it wasn't just looking up, he was mapping the journeys of these celestial bodies.
He was. And today we're diving deep into verse 3. To really understand his vision of these cosmic revolutions and what they tell us about how he saw the universe. Are you ready to keep going with this?
No, absolutely. It's like having a conversation across 1,500 years, and his words are so precise and elegant, it's incredible.
So, okay, let's imagine ourselves back in 499 CE. We're in Kusumapura during the Gupta-era, and Aryabhata is thinking about these huge cosmic cycles with the Mahayuga at the center. 4,320,000 years. It's hard to even grasp a number that big. What did this amount of time mean to him?
Well, you see, the Mahayuga was like the bedrock of his whole astronomical system. It was a cycle that lasted 4.32 million solar years, and it was the standard against which he measured the movements of all the celestial bodies. And we have to remember that back then, everyone thought the universe was geocentric. So from his point of view, the sun appeared to be going around the Earth. So you see, this Mahayuga was like a really consistent way to understand those movements that they were seeing.
But geocentric. So this massive 4.32 million year cycle was, from Aryabhata's perspective, tied to the sun's orbit around us and our planet. I mean, it's so different from our heliocentric model today, but that's just how they understood it then.
Exactly. And right in this huge Mahayuga. Verse 3 of the Daśagītikā lays out the specifics. I mean, the sheer number of orbits each celestial body makes around us, or in the case of Earth, around its own axis, all during this incredibly long cycle. It's like he's giving us the math of the cosmos.
And this meticulous charting wasn't just some theory, was it? I mean, there had to be a reason for it, right? Some practical purpose.
Oh, definitely. By working out these average rates of motion, how often the moon cycles or how much slower Saturn is, he created this basic system for telling time. And this was so important back then for agriculture and religious practices, and just for understanding the patterns in the sky.
It's like he made this blueprint of the heavens. He took these cosmic movements and put them into a system that's surprisingly simple when you consider how much it's explaining. And you mentioned how beautiful the Sanskrit is. It's not just like data points, is it?
No, not at all. The way this information is presented is just so elegant. It reflects a time when knowledge wasn't separated into little boxes like it often is today. Scientific observations were connected to philosophical ideas and even poetry.
I love that. Okay, so we've got the Mahayuga as our stage, this 4.32 million year cycle defined by khyughṛ. Now let's listen to the cosmic beats themselves. Aryabhata's records of revolutions. You used the word phagam before. Can you remind us what that means?
Yeah, sure. Vagad literally means like revolutions or orbits.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about verse 3, it means how many cycles a celestial body completes, either around Earth or its own axis. And all of this happens within that one Mahayuga time frame.
Gotcha. And these revolution counts are recorded using that cool syllable system we talked about before, like a secret code from the stars. Let's start with the sun, Ravi. Its code is khyughṛ. So how many revolutions of that?
You got it. khyughṛ is exactly 4,320,000. So Aryabhata is saying that the sun looks like it completes 4,320,000 orbits around the Earth in that one Mahayuga. This number, as we said, defines the length of the Mahayuga in solar years. It's like the main beat of this cosmic dance.
Makes sense that the sun's journey would set the whole rhythm for the cycle right. Now what about the moon? That's shashi. Its code is longer. It's khyughṛ, chāgyagi, and nushu. So how many revolutions are we talking about here?
That one decodes to a much bigger number, 57,753,336 revolutions. Now remember, these are sidereal orbits. That means they're measured against the background of the stars.
Whoa, over 57 million revolutions in that same 4.32 million years. That really shows how quickly the moon moves compared to the sun. It's like a different tempo in the celestial music.
Exactly. The moon is our closest neighbor in space, and it has this quick orbital period, and that's why we have tides and our monthly cycles.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting for me. Earth Ku. Its code is Ushibun Enji Ishibu Un Lishkri. And that unlocks a crazy big number, 1,582,237,500. But there's also the word proc with it. What does that add to the meaning?
That word proc, meaning eastward, is super important. This number for Earth is all about how many times it spins on its axis, and proc tells us it's spinning eastward. So Aryabhata is saying Earth spins eastward on its axis over 1.5 billion times within just one Mahayuga.
Over 1.5 billion spins. It's almost impossible to imagine. And that eastward rotation is why it looks like the stars are moving westward across the sky at night, Red.
You got it. Back then, most people thought the stars were on this rotating celestial sphere. But Aryabhata saying Earth spins eastward actually explains that nightly movement in a much simpler way. It's like the stars aren't moving together. It's that our planet is turning underneath them. And that was a huge shift in understanding.
So even though he still thought the universe was geocentric, he was adding this crucial idea of Earth spinning. Wow, that's pretty advanced for the 5th century. And that 1.5 billion rotations in a Mahayuga, that must be connected to the length of a day, right? Maybe not our regular 24-hour day, though.
Right. This is about the sidereal day. It's one full spin of the Earth compared to the stars, and it's a little bit shorter than our solar day, which is based on where the sun is. Basically, Aryabhata is telling us how many of these sidereal days fit inside a Mahayuga. Think of it as Earth's daily pulse.
A pulse that beats for millions of years.
Yeah.
So, verse 3 also tells us the revolutions for other planets too, right? Saturn, Jupiter, and Mars. And their numbers are smaller than Earth's. Can you tell us those quickly?
Of course. For Saturn, which is Shani, the number of revolutions in a Mahayuga is 146,568. Jupiter, or Guru, makes 364,224 revolutions. And Mars, or Kuja, clocks in at 2,296,832. And all these numbers show the different speeds at which these planets seem to move around Earth. At least that's how it looked from their perspective back then.
Okay, so we've got this amazing record of revolutions. But I want to go back to Earth's spin for a second. That idea on its own feels so revolutionary. To think that way back in 499 CE, Aryabhata was talking about Earth rotating eastward. How different was that from what everyone else thought about the universe back then?
Remember, the popular model was geocentric. Earth was in the middle and didn't move. And everything else, the sun, the moon, the stars, they all revolved around it. But when Aryabhata included prak, meaning eastward rotation, he was challenging that basic idea. He was saying there might be a better way to explain why the stars seem to move. Maybe it's not this huge celestial sphere spinning. Maybe it's our planet that's moving. And that wasn't just a small change. It was a completely different way to think about how Earth and the heavens are related.
Wow. So that one word prak had this huge groundbreaking idea inside it. It's like saying, what if we're the ones spinning, not the whole universe?
Yes, exactly. And that 1.5 billion spins. That tells us just how many of these sidereal days happen over that unbelievably long Mahayuga.
Amazing. And we still use this idea of a sidereal day in astronomy, right? The time it takes Earth to spin once compared to the stars. You said it's about 23 hours and 56 minutes long today.
Right. And when you realize that Earth spins like that, about 1.5 billion times in a Mahayuga, it explains perfectly why we see the stars move across the sky night after night for thousands and thousands of years.
It's amazing he figured that out so long ago. He was way ahead of his time. You mentioned his Gupta-era before. How is this idea connected to that?
Well, the Gupta-era is another part of his famous book, the Aryabhata, and in it he talks about the celestial sphere and the Earth as a sphere. And the idea of Earth spinning eastward, which he brings up here in the Daśagītikā, he actually talks about it more in the Gupta-era. He uses it to explain different things we see in the sky, like why things rise and set. So this verse 3 kind of lays the foundation with the numbers, and the Gupta-era explores what those movements really mean.
It's not just numbers carved in stone or anything. They're actually tools to measure time and figure out how long it takes planets to orbit. How did Aryabhata use these numbers to work out those orbital periods?
Okay, so he took the Mahayuga's length, or in the moon's case, he used the number of times Earth spins in that time, and he divided that by how many times a celestial body goes around in that same period. And what you get is the mean sidereal period, the average time it takes for one orbit compared to those fixed stars.
I see. So can you give us some specific examples, like compare Aryabhata's numbers to what we know today?
Absolutely. Let's start with the moon. We know there are about 1.5 billion sidereal days in a Mahayuga and about 57 million lunar orbits. If you divide those, you get about 27.4 days for the moon to orbit once, according to Aryabhata. Now, today we know the moon's sidereal period is 27.32 days. That's a difference of less than 1/3 of 1%. That's super accurate for something figured out 1,500 years ago.
It's crazy how close that is. What about a planet that's farther away, like Saturn?
Okay, for Saturn, we have a Mahayuga of 4.32 million years and 146,568 revolutions. That works out to about 29.47 years for one orbit. The modern value is 29.46 years. Again, super precise. He really understood how things moved up there.
Almost hard to believe. And you said it's the same for Jupiter and Mars, too.
Yep. For Jupiter, Aryabhata got about 11.86 years, which is really, really close to what we know today. And for Mars, he calculated about 1.88 years. Again, incredibly accurate. This wasn't just guessing. He really had a deep understanding of the rhythms of the solar system.
So much precision back in the 5th century. It's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
How did using the Mahayuga help him be so accurate?
Well, the Mahayuga is so long that it helps even out any little errors. Think of it this way. He's looking at movements over this incredibly long time. So any small mistakes he might have made when he was observing would get kind of smoothed out over time. That leads to really accurate averages. It's like taking tons of measurements and finding the average. The longer you measure, the more accurate that average gets.
That makes a lot of sense. And even something as basic as how long a year is the sidereal year can be figured out from these numbers too, right?
Oh, absolutely. If you divide the number of times Earth spins in a Mahayuga, which is about 1.5 billion, by the number of times the sun orbits, which is 4.32 million, you get about 366.26 days in a year. That's what Aryabhata calculated. Today we know it's about 366.25 days. Again, so accurate. It really shows how well he understood those cycles.
It really changes how we think about this, doesn't it? It's not just about the math. It's about what this knowledge meant back in Aryabhata's time. You said that during the Gupta era, people shared knowledge by speaking and listening. So how did verse 3 and all those numbers play into that?
Well, in those days, books weren't easy to come by. So these verses were like memory tools. The syllable system wasn't just for writing numbers. It actually helped create these rhythmic chants that people could easily remember and pass down. So verse 3, with its codes like khyughṛ, took those rhythms of the universe and made them part of everyday life. Farmers used them to know when to plant. Priests used them to figure out the right times for ceremonies. And scholars used them to understand the universe.
So these weren't just numbers for academics. They were woven into how people lived and even their spiritual beliefs. You also mentioned Bhaskaras from the 7th century and how important he thought this was.
Yeah, Bhaskara. I was a big fan of Aryabhata's work. He said these calculations were crucial, especially for keeping time accurately. And that was important for religious events and how society was organized. He saw verse 3 as the foundation for understanding the universe and how it affects us.
It really shows how amazing this was. It's incredibly precise from a scientific perspective, but it's also beautiful and rhythmic in the way it uses the Sanskrit language. It's like science and art together. And it's just so cool how AI can help us unlock these ancient ideas and appreciate how clever and complex they were. It reminds us that their vision still resonates, even now in 2025.
Totally agree. AI is like this bridge across time that helps us understand the brilliance and deep insights within these old codes. It's not just about the numbers themselves, but the way they understood the cosmos.
So Aryabhata's idea of cosmic revolutions in a Mahayuga, it's more than just a bunch of numbers. It's like the breath of the universe. It's a way to grasp those big cycles that govern everything. And next time we'll look at verse 4. That one's about Venus and Mercury. I'm sure it'll be packed with more fascinating insights.
I can't wait. Every verse reveals another piece of Aryabhata's extraordinary vision of the cosmos.
Until then, think about that code we started with. khyughṛ. I was a wagugri. That represents 4.32 million. What does that number mean to you now that we've explored the Mahayuga? We want to hear your thoughts. And if you're enjoying this journey into ancient knowledge using a modern lens, please subscribe to The Deep Dive. We're uncovering the wisdom of the past together.